What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and patch 11.1 is coming out for League of Legends. The notes are up, the patch should come out tomorrow, and as an asterisk, they're gonna micro-patch in more changes on day one, and so I copied the notes from Marketer's Twitter, and they're gonna be at the bottom of this video here as well, which will probably all be live at the same time when it goes out. Okay, so patch 11.1 is the start of the new season. LCS starts in a week and a half. That's exciting. Pro League's starting back up. It's good. I'm ready to get back to work. So let's talk about what's going on here. A lot of pretty good hits. A few nerfs that are solid. A few nerfs that are probably missing. But I would overall say I like this patch a lot. I would have liked it to be 25% larger, but still happy with the patch overall. So let's get into what's going on. Buffs to Karma, Gnar, Kiana, Ryze, Ziya. Nerfs to Fiddlesticks, Master Yi, and Pantheon. A bunch of item changes. Manamune and Muramana getting... Well, Manamune is definitely getting nerfed. Muramana is probably better. Whatever. Anyway, bunch of item changes. One of the big ones being that Burst is down, which is a positive. We can talk about that a little bit more as time goes on. Bunch of new skins. Alrighty, so Fiddlesticks, yeah, doing very, very well. Once again for this video, I cribbed a bunch of win rates from lolalytics.com. The average win rate for Plat Plus, this is what I'm using as just Plat Plus solo queue, was 50.67%. So if I say a champion had like a 51% win rate, really they're 0.3% win rate above the average Plat Plus champion. That's because of how Lolalytics does its win rate calculations. Everything's above 50%. By less than 1%, but just like substitute that in your mind for, you know, when things are actually good and bad, right? Just drop about 1% off stuff. So Fiddlesticks coming in at 54.2 in solo queue as a jungler. Very, very, very high win rate, obviously, pretty big deal. Decent pick rate, decent ban rate. He's not been really running over the game because he's not that popular, but has been doing very well. So a full 1 second cooldown increase on the W. Now, keep in mind, if you full channel the W, you get most of the cooldown back. I forget the exact numbers. I know I could have looked it up. But this will still increase the downtime between casts to some degree. This is a definitive clear speed nerf. This is the kind of change that's going to really, really be felt. Now, Fiddlesticks basically never actually runs out of health in the jungle. My understanding, having played a little bit of Fiddlesticks jungle post-rework, is that the burn from your starting item lasts longer than your downtime the W, so you're not losing burn DPS ever, but you are losing Bountiful Harvest DPS. Again, your health should be fine, but this is going to be somewhat of a nerf. So we've got the numbers here. I'm trying to not make it too much of a flashbang if I can help it, but I can only do so much. So yeah, 1 second on the cooldown is honestly pretty solid, right? You're getting, 10 to 14% up on the cooldown, and yeah, that's going to be felt a little bit. So yeah, I mostly just played in the jungle. This would be a pretty sizable win rate nerf, but Fiddlesticks should still be well above 50% and still a totally viable and very strong champion. Next up, we get Gnar, and these are mostly buffs to Mega Gnar, but you can see Boulder Toss getting up by 20 to 40 damage, the Slow going up by 15%, Crunch's jump range going up by 75, and then, hey, even for Mini Gnar, Hop gets more attacks, gets attack speed for 2 seconds longer. And this is Riot, I think, consistently buffing Mega Gnar. And I think they're, like, the direction of their changes have always been good. Now, yes, this is like the 7th buff in a row that Gnar has gotten, and eventually he'll be viable, and eventually we'll get there, sure. But I really do think this is the right place to keep going for Gnar. Now, it does a couple of things, right? Because one, you're in Mega Gnar like 1/4 of the time or less. So any buff you give Mega Gnar is kind of by definition less impactful than if it was to any other ability of any other champion. That's part of why Gnar, I think, has received so many buffs, because the buffs are always smaller than they look on paper. And I think that can sucker people into, okay, is it this time? No, it's a 0.5% win rate buff. It's not big enough. That said, Gnar is not complete crap. He's not outstanding, but he's not complete trash. So 48.9%. Yeah, he's 2.7% below 50. 1.8% below 50, but I mean, that's not horrible, right? That is clearly in playable territory. I mean, absolutely, I agree with, I think that's true. So anyway, pretty big buffs, which is kind of nice. Basically, the reason I like their Mega Gnar buffs overall, though, is because if Mini Gnar is the good form, you're just a ranged harass champion who can happen to also engage team fights, so you're a lane bully, but also an engaged tank, and that's just like, how do you beat that then? Because if you play the split pusher like Aurelia or whatever, you just build full tank. You made them pick a split pusher, but like Mega Gnar can fight Aurelia under the turret, no problem. And then you're the better team fighter. So like even the counter picks kind of get class countered because you just go team fight. So I realized that yes, the whole point of split pusher is that you're supposed to keep a tank away, but like as soon as Mini Gnar doesn't get assassinated, he's still a fighter, and it really doesn't just like outright beat other fighters. So again, I think it's a good idea that they're buffing Mega Gnar, and letting Mini Gnar not be the like just the absurd OP bully for him that he was in 2014. And yeah, it's been a long time since Gnar's been viable, but anyway, let's go into the numbers themselves. So here's the Mega Gnar Q damage, up by 20, up by 40. Pretty sizable damage increase. This ability does have a total AD ratio on it, and Mega Gnar has very, very high base AD. Yes, indeed, level 18 Boulder Toss does 427 damage. Yep, that's how much the ability deals. It's really, really strong. So this is obviously a wave clear buff and everything else. So the move speed nerf, or the slow increase, is also a big deal. As always, I'll continue to remind you that slows mean, like an increase in a slow means more the heavier the slow is. So a 15% increase in a slow that goes from 35 to 50 is a much bigger deal than one that goes from 15 to 30. So again, this is pretty good. The damage is up in the early game. The slow is mostly up in the later game. Those still, meaningfully improved at all points. I would say 15% slow is trash for a melee champion. This is why they buffed it, and only in Mega Gnar form, because this is just garbage if you're melee. So good job. I think rightly so. They are continuing to divorce the numbers between Mini and Mega Gnar. It does the weird thing of the tooltip gets really long. I forget the last champion I played who has like, Twisted Fate's blue card. If you ever like hover over the level up tooltip on that thing, it's like 15 lines. It's absurd. But yeah, that's gonna be the case here for Boulder Toss and Boomerang, but that's fine. I think these are good changes, and I'm happy they're doing it. Next up is Karma. Karma is very, 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 very poor right now. 46.9% in solo queue. Pretty low pick rate, absurdly low ban rate, of course, because who's going to ban Karma? The champion's a free win. And so, hey, they're giving her 0 to 40 flat shield on her E. I mean, that's pretty good. Of course, the problem still is that, yeah, she's, 3% win rate below fair, or actually 4% win rate below fair. So, she needs a lot. But, I mean, this is the weird thing about Karma is she's the one enchanter who gets pro viability even when she's sub 50% win rate. Meanwhile, everyone still just skips on Soraka and Sona and stuff, even though those champions are actually fine. So, okay, maybe there's kind of an XD going on, and pros are focusing on the wrong champions a little bit. And that's kind of the difficulty of Karma, is that she's, for the last several years, never really been balanceable, where she's okay in solo queue and not just taking over pro. I don't know how Riot gets there. I don't have an idea right now. I don't know what you're supposed to do with this. That said, the right way to build Karma is to put 2 or 3 points in Q and then max your shield. But players overwhelmingly, even in Plat Plus, still tend to finish maxing Q first. So that's the data I'm using, because that's what most people are doing. Now, I will say, to be really clear about something, Karma's win rate being 46.9%, that's because most players put 5 points in Q. And Riot is doing a smart thing and trying to bribe players into doing the right skill order, which is probably a positive. But most Karmas build very suboptimally because they're not putting points in shield in time. So the mid game is really trash because they have 2 points in shield at level 8, and it shields for 110, and it's not enough. And they're not a damage champion. It's mid game, and you're a support. You're not Xayah. You're not Brand. So Karma's win rate is heavily suppressed by bad Karma players, and I mean really heavily. There is a substantial win rate difference between Qmax and Emax. And by Emax, I mean like 2 or 3 points in Q and then put your shield by max rank by level 10. That is a really, really big deal. It has a huge impact. Karmas who properly max E on time are not in such a horrible spot. And I could have looked up the numbers for that one, but it's really close to 50%. So if you're not bad at Karma, Karma's not a dumpster champion. Like, she's completely viable and you should play her. She's actually good. If you're a bad player who just like, oh, it's Karma, I max Q because I max Q. Yeah, that champion's still trash. Does that mean that Riot should maybe consider buffing Q a bunch? And, maybe just giving it like a minion damage reduction, do like a Lulu thing, right? And let the bad Karmas just like backdoor into a decent win rate because they buff the ability. I mean, maybe like that's actually a consideration, I think, but oh well. I think there are ways to kind of subtly help the bad karmas do well, but again, I do want to point out, I really do think support karma is actually going to be fine, as long as you're not bad at her. So yeah, that's the shield difference. If you're maxing Q first, which it's not going to be, but if you're maxing, yeah. All right. Master Yi is just doing slightly too well in average play, they're saying. So indeed, in Plat Plus, his win rate's not absurd. 51.68 is only 1% above, the median, or I guess the mean Plat Plus win rate. So he's not absurd in Plat Plus. He's clearly doing better in Gold Silver. That's fine, sure, okay. So they're bumping down the amount of time he's invulnerable in team fights. So yeah, I mean, this is a late game cooldown nerf. Now, by the time you have like rank 3 Q and it's a full 1 second off the cooldown, your clear speed's really, really fast already. Now, keep in mind, there's a couple things going on here. Okay, Master Yi has 2 different resets on his Q cooldown. One is percentage based, which is whenever he gets a killer assist, post 6, and that means that stuff resets really, really fast. And a 1 second or 2 second increase gets cut down by 70% anyway, and it's a half second increase, which can matter but often won't. So it's not a very, very big deal in team fights, which I find kind of interesting. The other half of it, though, which to be fair is still very relevant, is the flat cooldown reduction when you land an auto attack. And so Alpha Strike is never an 18-second cooldown. It's actually 11-second cooldown because you attack 7 times in 11 seconds at level 1, roughly, right? And so as you level up and you go to level 5 and then level 9, and okay, 16 becomes 14, and okay, you actually attack, again, because your attack speed's increasing, you're attacking 7 times in the 9 seconds it takes to go from 16 to 9, and then up goes the Q again. You attack maybe 6 times in the 8 seconds it takes to go from 14 to 8. And so even still, with the additive attack reset stuff going on, the extra 2 seconds on the cooldown is time for you to auto attack once again and then cut the cooldown a bit lower. Now, again, going from an 8-second cooldown to a 9-second cooldown is actually meaningful, right? Like that's an important amount of attacks. I hope that made sense. Like, I hope I'm actually making sense here with what I'm saying. But this is realistically, an 8-second cooldown becoming a 9-second cooldown when you're like just jungling, or if you're just chain autoing someone and trying to get your Q back up because you're fighting a tank Jarvan or something. That's going to be felt pretty heavily, and honestly, to somewhat the same tune that you're going to see this nerf, because again, it's still plus 2 seconds, but it also gives you one extra auto to put it down to 1 second difference. You are still vulnerable for 1 second longer, but I think the end result is actually that these cooldowns are never quite as large as you expect, and the differences are never quite as large as you expect. Still going to be a nerf. Good job here, but it's going to be a pretty small one, and Master Yi should still be pretty viable. Either way, here is the Q cooldown in chart form. Pretty easy numbers, so yeah, level 3 onwards. Next up is Pantheon. Pantheon is losing 1 on his base health regen per 5. I will say that 10 per 5 is very high. 9 puts him still at a very solid spot for a melee champion. And Shield Vault's empowered auto attack triple strike is getting weaker. So it's a very simple change. It's a very small change. I think Riot is saying that Pantheon in lanes, specifically top mid, is the one that needs the nerfs. These nerfs feel solo lane focused. So what's interesting about Pantheon is he's got over 10% of his games in 4 different roles. So about a 4% pick rate in top, about a 2% pick rate in jungle, about a 3.5% pick rate in mid, and about a 6% pick rate in support. Now, support is his single most common role, but support is only about 40% of his games, right? It's 6.23 out of an overall 15.5% pick rate, right? So it's about 40% of his games are in support. 60% of his games, he is the carry. His win rate is higher in every one of those other 3 roles. Mid is 54.5, top is 53.5, jungle is 52.5, and then support is 50.79. Remember, our average win rate for Plat Plus is 50.67. So Pantheon is a mechanically, like, power level balanced support. He is an OP top mid jungle. People are playing him support more than any other single role, but he's being played as a carry more than he is a support. So I will say very strongly that the 10.25, 3, whatever, changes were really, really good. I'm a big fan of them because they really did make Pantheon back into a farm champion. More often than not, he is played as a champion who is earning his own gold and fighting champions more directly. That's a good thing. I really, really, really do believe that. In fact, even just in his solo lanes, he's in a solo lane more often than he's in the support role. And there's a little bit of jungle to boot for fun. But he is really overpowered there. And I am a little curious if people will shy away from playing lane Pantheon. No, I don't think so. Because the winners are so high and players have understood that lane Pantheon is really, really, really absurd, that as Pantheon's overall power level goes down, especially his, short trade burst damage goes down, he becomes less of a viable support because he's already, just at balanced for the current player base who's playing him. And you can nerf him quite a bit before he becomes a bad solo laner. So I think these can work pretty well. And I think we can make this happen. So, yep, just a bit too strong. Sure, indeed. Health regen down by 1. W damage down by, at most, 0.15 total AD. Great. I just pressed the wrong thing. Let's scroll back down and then actually tab over. All right. So here is Pantheon's health per minute before and after. It's a flat change of 12 health a minute. So early, more in the early game, less in the late game. Now, what's interesting is, of course, solo lane Pantheon has more access to sort of affirmative health regen because you can, get Ravenous Hydra and you actually hit minions and get your health back. Things like that. So I'm not sure if the health regen hurts solo lane or support more. It's actually kind of a tough call for me because I don't really know. Pantheon support can often kind of dodge away from poke, but that said, if a Xayah is landing, plant poke, maybe it does whittle him down. Either way, it's a pretty small change. It feels more like consistency to me. I'm not sure which lane health regen is skewed at. It's an easy thing to hit because he's overtuned in that number. And I like always tapping down things that are overtuned. As far as the W damage, this is the base damage of the W added to the total AD ratio we saw times his actual total attack damage. And so it is a pretty meaningful damage cut. Maxing W last is the most common build in all roles. Maxing W second is competitive against really all 4 of those roles. Against E second, it's pretty close regardless. So really as a Pantheon, you can kind of choose which way you want to go. There's some slight skews like support and jungle Pantheon kind of care about W a bit more because they are the ones CCing people. Their job is more CC than damage. So there's a little bit there, but regardless, it is an early game damage nerf. And keep in mind, right, support Pantheon spends more of his time in the, as a low level champion than top or jungle or mid Pantheon. So, if mid Pantheon always hits level 13 every game and it's 2% damage nerf, but, support Pantheon often ends at level 8 and it's a 4% damage nerf, yeah, and it's a bigger part of the damage budget, right? That said, lane Pantheon has more AD, and so an AD ratio nerf, of course, hits that more. End of the day, I still think this nerf hits support Pantheon more. The end result is what I believe, which means support Pantheon is probably sub 50. He is going to be technically weak. I think they really could have gone harder on nerfing Pantheon and found something else to tap down, but, he'll be a 51, 52% win rate champion, maybe even 53 in mid, and, he'll need follow-up nerfs probably in 11.1, 11, or 11.2 or 11.3. This is going to be my guess. Next up is Kiana. Kiana is not doing very well. She doesn't have 10% of her play rate in anything but mid, so we're just looking at mid lane stats here. 47.76% means she's 3% below the mean champion overall, which is pretty bad. Pick rate at 2%, ban rate's non-existent, and so pretty sizable buffs. And so her health regen, right, is going up to that same 9 that we had Pantheon at. And even a nice, meaty 0.9 per level up from 0.65. That's pretty meaningful as well. So she's going to have a lot more sustain. And I will say that this is another situation where I'm really a fan of consistency because from what I have seen and what I believe to be true, base stats, the more base stats you have, the higher they are. the more solo queue skewed you are, and especially the more low elo solo queue skewed you are. Pros don't need base stats very well because they earn so much gold. They're good at hiding from harass. They're good at last hitting efficiently, and they're good at keeping their gold income up. And so what that means is the better you are at League of Legends, and take Challenger or Grandmaster as a replacement for Pro and whatever else, the better you are at League of Legends, the more of your power comes from gold. Because any idiot can sit in lane. It's not hard. I can also earn XP as fast as Bjergsen. I just need to not die. I can never earn gold as fast as Bjergsen. Yeah, okay, Bjergsen's a solo queue player now, or a coach really, but, the point still stands. I can earn the same XP as Faker. I can never earn the same gold as Faker. At least I can come close, in the XP front. I'll, probably int it a few times, but that point still stands. And so the more of a champion is in their base stats, the more, and by base stats, I also mean like the base damage and abilities, right? Just hitting level 5 and getting rank 3Q is, to me, functionally kind of a base stat. And so the more that you're able to have the power level of a champion just to be from leveling up, the more the champion can succeed in bronze. And there's a lot of ways to do that, right? You can, again, make their health regen, normal. You can make their base AD 66. You can even make their ratios total AD ratio instead of bonus AD ratio, so that, level 13 Kiana got another 6 damage on her Q just from leveling up. And for, someone who's already farmed 3 items, that's not terribly important. But for someone who hasn't gotten that good and is still on, Duskblade plus Serrated Dirk, that's a lot more meaningful. And so that is, I think, a tuning lever that Riot uses a fair bit, but could use a whole lot more to flatten out some of the growth curves, because we have champions like Kiana who are 3% win rate below mean. And maybe as an assassin, she has to sit below that, because we look at Katarina's 49.8% win rate and Akali's 50.1% win rate, and the internet is screaming over how abusive and toxic these assassins are. And they may well be frustrating. I'm not debating frustration, but they're not overpowered. But assassins almost always seem to have to sit below 50%. I mean, Kha'Zix, I think, certainly should be nerfed, by the way. I'm shocked he's not yet. But anyway, that said, I am a fan of base stat nerfs for a champion that has consistently been a problem in Pro and never been a power problem, only a frustration power in solo queue, or a frustration problem. So here we go. Here are the actual changes, because boy, howdy, is it a lot of health regen. Now, what I find interesting is here's the Pantheon health regen. He goes from 108 to 241. Kiana has really, really high health regen growth, so she goes from 108 to 292. Didn't have to be this high. The growth didn't have to be that high, but I mean, whatever. Again, you're trying to find some decent base stats to give a champion. I truly don't actually mind inconsistency. Because again, right, wanted to find a place to give her some base value, because she is pretty bad in the hands of non-experts, and that's totally understandable. And so, yes, you have higher than normal health regen growth. That's fine. It really is. 2 base ADs, of course, not a lot. None of her abilities have total AD ratios. They're all bonus AD ratios, so none of this affects her spell casting. It's just her auto attacking. And yes, she has an auto attack resets in the kit. Sure, of course, that's going to be somewhat meaningful. But it's another case where I kind of want Kiana to have total AD ratios, because attack resets are really pro skewed. Right? It's the Nidalee problem. Where like old Nidalee had, I think, exactly 8 attack resets. Like every single button press outside of like Javelin Toss had an attack reset on it. Maybe it was 5, but it was like every single Cougar form ability and both transforms had resets. It was actually pretty absurd. And it's like, well, turns out when you can tap into 5 attack resets, you're really, really elo skewed. Sorry, no one but Challenger gets to use Nidalee. And that's a problem. Because not like she's conceptually that hard to play. It's just like, well, you have to press every ability in between every auto attack and get perfect attack resets, or you can't even clear the jungle. Is like, that's a bit of a price to pay when you're silver, where most players are, right? They get to play League 2. And so Kiana's not a champion with like a bunch of attack resets, right? Grabbing a new element, tossing your Qs out in time. Like, she's very mechanically tough to play. I would not mind if Riot gave her more power in her baseline of abilities. I would like a total AD conversion. I think that would actually be functional for her. Either way, yeah. Good players can tap into the attack resets and tap into the 2 AD. No one else can. The 2 AD does not affect any of her abilities. It's just her auto attacks, which you don't hit that much of. You can last it a bit better. That's useful. You will attack some in team fights, of course. That's useful. The health regen is a bigger part, and she'll gain some and still be sub 50. Next up is Ryze. Ryze is struggling indeed in all roles, giving back some mana. Now keep in mind there are Serifs Embrace buffs in this patch as well. Also, Riot nerfed Muramana last patch, and not all the Ryzes have gotten off that item. So Ryze's win rates are getting really, really, really close to 50%. Ryze top is 48.8. Ryze mid is 47.4. Now, 47.4, to be clear, is lower than Kiana's 47.8, so there's room to go. But, I mean, Ryze top being at 48.8 is not bad. Like, he's getting pretty close. And this is with some players still building the wrong items on him. Ryze is not so absurdly far away from being viable. So here's some mana cost cuts to his mid-game Q. Just make sure you can keep spamming. Ryze is indeed hard bound to Serifs Embrace. Again, the item is getting buffed. That is a useful thing. Here's the mana cost. It's down 20% in the mid-game. Not a tough one to look at. Ryze is probably still sub 50, don't get me wrong, but he's getting pretty close, at least in top lane. I mean, he's a full 1.5% above his mid lane win rate. It's a pretty big difference. But yeah, he's pretty much there. He's getting pretty close to there. Next up is Ziya, who is doing very poorly. Now, the nice thing is Riot has buffed the 3 worst performing AD carries this patch. Good job. They took all 3 of them. That's great. Wouldn't mind seeing this continue on, where again they just take like the bottom 3 per lane and always force add them, and add that to like the Oracle thing, where you literally have 15 guaranteed buffs every patch. And it's the top 3 worst performers in each lane. That being graded by like their ban rates are all sub 1%, their win rates are all trash, and it's their primary role, right? Even if you're like, oh, until everything's within like 2% of each other, right? But these champions are in a pretty bad spot. So Xayah is as bad as Ryze, 47.39. So unless I mistranscribed, which I don't believe I did, but it's certainly possible. Xayah is, complete dog poop. So she gets a nice, cool 2 seconds off rank 1 of the Blade Caller cooldown, and a nice 1/4 off the mana cost. This is pretty meaningful. So here's the cooldown. Again, it flattens out by level 9, but this is really going to be felt. The mana cost going from 40 to 30 is really going to be felt. I have found in my time playing Xayah, you're pretty good on mana for most points in time. You don't really run out that easily because you can use just Q to set up your E or just W to set up your E. So it's not that bad, but it is nice that, the mana costs are even more convenient. It's certainly a buff. Like, at some point you could have run out of mana and now won't. Like, and you get 1 more rotation of spells off. That is useful. That's cool stuff. The cooldown being much shorter, also very, very useful. I'm glad there's still like some cooldown scaling on Blade Caller, because I really do think this is like the ability you should be maxing first, and Riot should really keep incentivizing Xayah to max E first. It's her coolest ability. It's the one you want to definitely get points into. Right, she's not getting Essence Reaver, so mana cost stuff, cooldown stuff, etc. So great. Good buff. This is, I think, a pretty big deal, honestly. This should be a solid, like 1.5% win rate bump, realistically, to Blade Caller, even though it's only early game focused. This is honestly pretty meaningful. The more you can get those roots out, the better she is at laning. So this is going to do a lot. She's going to be sub 50, but she's actually going to gain quite a lot. So it just depends if you want to play Xayah or not. Next up, we have changes to Yasuo and Yone. They are both losing 1 attack damage growth. In its place, they are getting their crit strike chance instead of doubled. It's 2.5x. So a 20% crit item, instead of going to 40 crit, becomes 50 crit. Because of that, they're turning the crit to AD conversion. It's going from 0.5 to 0.4, which is mathematically identical, right? 40 crit times 0.5 AD, or 50 crit times 0.4 AD, those become the same number, 20. But because you're hitting 100% and beyond earlier, right? Like, keep in mind, with old Yone and Yasuo, you would buy your 3rd item, you'd go to 120 crit, and then you're finally there. With this post patch, you're at 100 at 2 items, then your 3rd item puts you at 140. So you're converting 40 crit, you're going to 150. You're converting 50 crit into 20 AD versus turning 20 crit into 10 AD. So though you're losing 1 AD per level, at 3 items and higher, you're also always at 10 more attack damage than before from this. In addition to the fact that at 1 item and 2 items, you just have more crit chance to fight this. So what this means is basically they have a stronger 2-item power spike. This gives them 100% crit chance. They get to enjoy pre-rework, which is nice because they used to have 25. However, to balance the early game damage, they're decreasing the overall damage output. As a reminder, don't build Ginsus. So this is indeed what's happening. So here is Yone or Yasuo's base AD. We have Yone down below. We'll get to that in a little bit. The numbers aren't very different. So here is Yasuo's base AD. Here is Yasuo's AD with 60% base crit. At 3 items, here is the attack damage, which is again plus 10 or plus 20 in the new version. And so up until level 13, you have more AD than before. Now, again, before you buy any items at all, you are objectively weaker at level 2+ because you have less AD. But once you have 3 items, you have objectively more attack damage until eventually the leveling overtakes it. This is not meant to be a direct buff. It's meant to be a small reshape. So, yeah, full build Yasuo, right? Level 13+ is objectively weaker. Unless, keep in mind, you earned more gold from levels 5 through 11, and thus, you're always up an extra pickaxe because of the extra 2 kills you got. That's certainly possible. Okay, but what about in the middle? Well, what if you get to 20% crit chance? Now, I chose to do it with 20 instead of like 15%, like just a Zeal or a Cloak, but, let's say you got to your shield bow. Well, if you got the shield bow before level 6, it's a buff. If you got the shield before level 6, it's a buff. This is the expected auto attack damage with 20% crit chance, because the old version is, okay, well, I had 40% crit chance and then 60% chance to not crit, so let's add my attack damage to my other stuff. And by the way, now I do want to point something out though. This is actually a fairly meaningful point here. I am not including the bonus AD from the items this champion is buying. That is relevant because your 20 crit chance by necessity is with shield bow. And so, a difference between, 73 and 69 nice attack damage is much more meaningful, 5%, than 103 and 99 attack damage. That's more like 3 or 4%. And so that is part of the calculation that we are not including here. And in my sort of absurd simplicity of these charts, that is a bit of a problem. So we can actually fix this pretty easily. So we can add 60 to the attack damage of both of these, right? And just pretend this guy has 60 more AD than before. And we can pull the numbers back down. And again, we have these numbers yet again. These aren't any different, but now, with something that gives me 60 attack damage, I'm better until level 9. What about if we have 100 bonus attack damage, right? What if we have even more items, right? We're at our next major completed item. We have 100 bonus AD. This is what our real attack damage, because we have shield bow and yeah, it's probably Infinity Edge, but let's pretend it's not. Oh, it's better for a while, right? It's better until level 17. Okay, turns out we're fine. Right. And so when you actually do include what you're expecting to buy here, and we can, double check exactly when the breakpoint really is, sure. But yeah, turns out that if you're really paying attention to what you're actually buying and you're, doing good stuff there, then yeah. Are you at 1 item by level 10? You'd better be. Are you at 2 items by level 17? You'd better be. Okay, yeah. These are, in fact, undeniably buffs to 1 and 2 item Yasuo. He is objectively stronger when you finish shield bow and when you finish IE afterwards. This is not up for debate. This is definitely true. And honestly, Gale Force is stronger for someone like Yone. This becomes basically the same thing with Yone. There's not really a big point in rehashing these numbers. Technically, Yone has slightly less attack damage growth by 0.2. The numbers don't really change by any way, so we're just going to kind of skip over those. Yes. These champions are definitively spiking harder at 1 item and at 2 items. And then at 3 items beyond, you're only weaker at level 13+. Seems decent. Seems like, yeah, these champions are going to be fine. Okay. And again, just to rehash what these numbers are, it's your expected damage per auto attack because your crit chance has changed. Which functionally is also the expected added damage from, your Q and whatnot. So, yep, should work out, should make total sense. Great. And hey, by the way, if you have bonus AD ratios for things like Yasuo and Yone's ultimates, those also they have a flat 10 damage on top, right? Because you have plus 10 from crit conversion, it becomes plus 20 from crit conversion. So those abilities also just do, 1.0 AD, or 10 times their AD ratio more damage. So, I mean, definitively, I think these are slightly stronger champions overall. The very, very, very small nerf in, 2 total attack damage late game is just not going to be felt. Okay, fine, it's 7 total attack damage late game, but that's not going to be felt by comparison to probably those power spikes being better and the ultimates being stronger. So I don't see that being a problem. Alrighty. Let's move on to my favorite change of the year, because preseason was the year before. My favorite change of the year, we have rounded base AD, armor, MR, and mana to the nearest 1. We have rounded health regen and mana regen to the nearest 0.1 or 0.25. We have rounded AD and MR and armor growth to the nearest 0.01. Because, yeah, the trailing digits were too much, and hey, mana regen growth, for some reason, health regen growth wasn't. I don't know why, but whatever. Still, as my nose keeps itching, I am glad to see these changes. And I want to be really clear, these do not affect the balance of the game in any way. It just simply makes drawing numbers into tables a lot easier, and I am happy about it. It makes numbers easier to work with. It makes things make a bit more sense, and just generally happy. So good stuff. Yay, I'm glad. Certainly, yes, more could be done. You could... assuming that base health means health regen, I didn't see them technically affect base health. You could round base health to the nearest 5. Realistically, health growth could easily be, rounded to the nearest 1 as well, for whatever reason. Some of the health stats haven't changed, but again, happy to see it. Cool beans. Let's move on to the item changes now. All right, first and foremost, Archangel Staff has 5 more ability power. However, you are getting 1% less AP from max mana. Now, keep in mind 5 AP, right? 1% of 500 max mana is that. Technically, Archangel's is objectively weaker. I mean, you really can't have less than 500 mana with an Archangel Staff in your inventory. So, I am a little surprised to see this item get nerfed. I don't know, it's just kind of strange to me. It didn't feel like Archangels in and of itself needed to be nerfed. Now that said, Serifs is no change. Is it even? Yeah. So Serifs is retaining the 5 AP buff, and the Awe AP percentage is still 5%. So, the real changes are the AP is up by 5. It's tier plus amp tome plus NLR instead of tier plus sapphire plus NLR. This is a really big deal because honestly, you had NLR that you had to wait for like 1,200 something gold worth of items you didn't care about because the raw sapphire crystal was trash anyway. Because you didn't have Archangel Staff, right? You had an NLR on a tier. You didn't need 250 more mana. This was not a component. It was just a really expensive combined cost of 1,350. Now you at least get to buy another piece of gear that you care about, which is a positive thing. I assume part of this is to I don't know really. Again, it doesn't really matter that Archangel got nerfed because it's just going to turn to Serifs anyway. It just feels kind of fiddly to be here, in my opinion. It's kind of whatever, but again, it just kind of feels weird. But regardless, again, this is a good item. This is strong. I've run numbers repeatedly on Archangels and Serifs. Serifs is not a bad item. It gives you a lot of ability power, like 200 in a lot of cases. Assuming you're going for, an Everfrost or any of the other mana mythics, this item gives 860. Your mana mythics gives 600. You're probably getting mana flow ban if you're being this kind of a mana stacker. So you have 1,700 bonus mana plus the almost 1,000 base mana that most mages have. And then you're getting that multiplied by, 8-ish%, which is, another couple hundred. I mean, these are champions who are going to have 3,000 base mana. And 5% of 3,000 mana is 150, and the item gives 65. Like these items give a lot of ability power, a really, really, really large amount of ability power. And as soon as Archangel Staff doesn't suck to build, it's a pretty reasonable 200 AP item with enough mana to make sure you never have to worry about mana again. Now, the unfortunate thing is, because you went Mana Flow banned and got a Luden's Tempest, you already don't have to care about mana. So there is still some kind of confused place in the builds for Archangels and Serifs, but it is not objectively a trash item. So here is Serifs Embrace before and after the patch. Again, yes, you're really getting 2,800 gold worth of ability power because, yeah, that's what your max mana actually looks like. It's really, really quite good. Either way, let's look at this. So, you know, they buff the AP by 5. It's like roughly gold efficient without the mana, with the mana converting in, but then, you know, I don't know. Here's what I can say. The item almost pays for itself in just the AP conversion. The better the item is to build, the more likely you are to do this. Tier starts are, you know, roughly viable on a lot of mages, especially if you're going to be mana hungry. So I play bot Swain a bunch. Helped get me to Diamond last season. And tier start on Swain is actually pretty good. Now, yes, this can be awkward because you might be allowing Zonias to do this, but tier into Liandry's means you can spam with complete impunity and you can perma-shove bot lane. Just hardcore perma-shove bot lane. You have complete lane priority forever. They're playing under their turret. You throw a little, you know, claw out, or, you know, you have the opening for a blitzcrank hook. Like, you can just spam, and that feels really good. The awkward part is then trying to build Archangel Staff from there because it's NLR plus nothing else I care about, and it's a 3,000 gold item. That sucks kind of a lot. As soon as it's got an amp tome in there, and then the combined cost is actually then lower from there, you've got a lot better pieces to go in, and it's going to feel a lot better. This really can be relevant. This item is, I think, truly not trash. It's obviously hard bound on Ryze. Well, congrats, Ryze got 5 free ability power. It's completely, you know, acceptable and battles well across other item choices on like Castan and Nivea and Cassiopeia, and like there's like 10 other mages where Serifs / Archangels is a completely reasonable second item build. It is as good as their Cosmic Drive or Demonic Embrace choices. Just want to point that out. I agree the item kind of feels bad and doesn't really have a super good place, but it's actually a pretty strong item. Next up, Ionic Boots Lucidity has 5 more ability haste on it. We're going to scroll down here to Boots of Lucidity real quick. Very gold efficient. You are never paying for the summoner spell haste. You are just getting a gold efficient amount of ability haste and move speed. This is a good item. This should feel good. What's interesting is this is a buff to a lot of lethality AD carries, at least those who aren't going Swifties already, like Jhin, but for maybe lethality Varus or, you know, a lethality MF or something who doesn't want to go back to an auto attack pattern. Now, certainly Varus is probably going to still use Zergreaves a lot of the time because he really does care about getting auto attacks in to pop blight stacks, so, you know, may not switch off Zergreaves, but still a consideration, possibly. It is an AD caster buff. This is also a consideration for AP casters. Now, the problem is Sorc shoes are just the best item in the game, or the best boots in the game, and so it's really hard to, you know, combat this and come back and say, no, give up Sorc shoes for Boots Lucidity. But there can be a case for these items. I mean, it's cheaper. It is a lot of haste. I know a lot of mages sometimes are like really struggling to find haste in their builds because it's only the 2 defensive items in Cosmic Drive, and okay, sure, Liandry's. But if you're not a mana user, can be tough. I mean, yeah, okay, Night Harvester has haste on it, but still. I don't know, that is one thing that is kind of interesting is I've seen mages complain about not getting exit ability haste, but you have Night Harvester and Liandry's as a haste item, and you're going to have 20 extra haste on a full build, plus the mythic in and of itself. So I don't know. I don't necessarily fully agree that haste isn't really available there for mages, but here's another item with 20 on it, so there you go. This is seemingly part of a small push. I mean, there's more down the line, and they're really objective about it and direct about it, but this is actually part of it. This is not really said so. This is a push to try to lower the burst damage in League of Legends a bit, which is good. I mean, burst has been increasing over time for sure. Some of that because of direct things like the new mythics, and some of that because items are getting more efficient, and so it's easier to just get, you know, really large amounts of raw AP on mages. You know, Frozen Heart used to be one of the ideal CDR items back in the day because Nashor's didn't exist in its form. You know, it was a real consideration way back when. That has obviously since changed, but it was a thought. So anyway, the point is, hey, if more mages are willing to go Boots Lucidity, then fewer mages are going to one-shot you with a Tibbers combo because they don't have 18 magic pen, and so you don't take 12% more damage. That's actually pretty interesting and pretty cool. And maybe we will see this happen a little bit more over time, but this is kind of where we're going, right? A little bit less burst, a little bit more sustained damage. Cool. Let's see if it can work. Next up, Manamune getting a 300 gold cost increase. But yes, going from 2 to 2.5% mana into AD. I don't care much about Manamune in and of itself because Muramana is the completed part. This is, again, I didn't really look into it that much, but it's going to be power roughly neutral, except for keep in mind that we took Sapphire Crystal out of the build path and put Longsword into the build path. Sapphire Crystal now only builds in a Glacial Shroud. That is the only, and Lost Chapter. Sapphire Crystal is on its way out. Good IMO. The fact that actually there's more AD and the build path is better is, I would just argue, a straight buff to Manamune, even though this is more expensive. I actually believe that. Maybe not, but I kind of believe that. A lot of people who are going Muramana are going Muramana first, and then building their Mythic second, which means you're not actually delaying Muramana. You're delaying Manamune, but you're not delaying Muramana. Whereas if you're doing Divine Thunderer first with a tier and then going Manamune, then you are delaying Muramana, and then this nerf does matter. Anyway, even though you're always delaying items, yeah. So they did a much better change now. So instead of only doing physical damage spells, it works on all spells. It's just the on-hit damage is lower, and it's more AD instead, and it's more expensive. I mean, the problem they're trying to solve was people are poaching Muramana, and that's bad. And I tend to agree with that. I think that's actually acceptable sort of to talk about and say, hey, this kind of feels bad. This isn't the most exciting thing. So let's talk about where Muramana is, which is this one right here. Unfortunately, yeah, we are kind of, well, you can kind of see it. It's good enough. We're fine here. I guess we could like narrow this column slightly. There you go. You can kind of see the numbers. We're okay. So yeah, I mean, it was obviously gold efficient just by itself, just from the attack damage, ability, haste, and mana. Obviously 1,300 gold worth of AD on top, fully compensated for the mana itself. So it was gold efficient just on AD and ability haste. Then you got a really big on hit thing, which is obviously very, very strong, very, 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 very good item. So now it is, well, honestly, yeah, it's still pretty much gold efficient just on ability haste and attack damage. You know, the item got 300 gold more expensive, and you got about 300 gold more of attack damage. So, you know, that part went 1 for 1, no problem. Of course, the big thing is they nerfed the on-hit damage from 4% to 2.5%, and even though that damage got roughly cut in half, the big thing to mention is that it now goes back to working on magic damage spells. So it pops on Jhin traps, it works on Ezreal E and Ezreal R, and that's important. Ezreal lost a lot of win rate last patch when they messed with Muramana, and I said I didn't enjoy the changes because it screwed with good, you know, honest users like Ezreal, who for some reason half his spells deal magic damage. In fact, the only spell he has that deals physical damage is his Q. It's not the worst thing ever. It's a little flavorful and whatever. It's not necessarily a problem that Ezreal has a bunch of magic damage on the kit. That I'm not really trying to complain about that, but he really got screwed by the Muramana change because half his kit no longer works with, you know, the item he's always going to buy. So good change here. This is going to, you know, lift Corki's win rate because now his W and R once again get to apply Muramana. That's good. Ezreal's win rate lift because his E and his R could, you know, deal magic damage, and that needed to happen. So those are all positive things. In general, the on-hit damage is low enough. You probably aren't seeing it get poached for the other, you know, mages because they'll just pick up Serifs because Serifs is not a bad item. I mean, I would definitely, I think, rather take the, you know, 200 ability power than the 60, not even 60, 50 on hit damage. Yeah. I take 200 AP. Unless your AP ratios are that bad, yeah, you're good. So I think these are good changes. Well done to Riot. That's good stuff. Next up, the change we actually thought was coming in from last patch actually is the Wind's Fury Bolt damage is now flat. The build path is back to Dagger Zeal with the smaller combined cost. Overall, though, it is still less efficient than the season before. We talked about this in the last patch rundown, but it's now here again for real, so we copied it over. Compared to preseason, or pre-preseason, the end of 2020 roughly, Rune's Hurricane has 280 less gold worth of stats. It's got 2% less move speed. It's got 5% less crit chance. The item is only 100 gold cheaper. When you compare to things like Rapid Fire Cannon, and Stormrazor, those items, were like given a bunch of compensatory attack speed and stuff. So those items actually remained somewhat the same efficiency. So Hurricane has lost efficiency. Now, sure, you're still only paying 420 gold for Wind's Fury. That's worth paying. Like, it's not like Hurricane is a bad item. It just got nerfed by more than the other items did. The other, Zeal upgrades it's competing against may still be fine. And regardless, the fact that this item comes online 900 gold sooner is a big deal. Like, keep in mind, instead of paying 445 for Wind's Fury, you're paying 420 for Wind's Fury. One of the things that designer did with the AD carry items, and in general I still like it in concept, is all of the AD carry items that scale from level 10 onwards. If you buy this item at level 8, it's not getting better at level 9. If you buy the item at level 10, it's still the lowest value of the item, which means that you can be level 11 with Wind's Fury and it's like 44%. And that can feel pretty bad to be like sizably, 2.5 items in and your item scaling has just started scaling. Like if they had made Wind's Fury, 55 to 70% and, had that be the start point at level 10, like that would have felt different. But instead, you kind of didn't get to achieve the scaling. And again, the point was that Hurricane was meant to be positioned as a late game item. No, it's not even, very good first. It's not even very good second. No, buy it third, buy it fourth, buy it fifth. Like that can be, intentional and that's fine. But it really hurt people who wanted to buy Hurricane second. It really hurt Callista. It really hurt Jinx. These champions who wanted to buy Hurricane and spent 900 more gold. And yeah, I mean, the Pickaxe was good, the AD was good, but, you were paying more money for Wind's Fury, and yet it wasn't any better. Yeah, that felt bad. So good to see the change, good to see the revert kind of entirely. Yeah, it still lost 2 move speed. Yeah, it still lost 5 crit chance like all the Zeal upgrades did. And I mean, every crit item did, but I think it's okay. Item should be decent. Callista should be happy. Jinx should be happy. I think the item is generally fine. Next up, Shirelias has 50% more move speed than before. That's a pretty big deal. It has been getting kind of low win rate, hasn't been working too well. Shirelias ideally should work for support tanks who want to engage with their team. It should work for enchanters who want to let their team get away from engage. Right? If you see the Hecarim running at you, you pop Shirelias, your team's getting out over these 4 seconds. That's a lot of move speed. Like, this really should be able to help. This should be an option. It should be a consideration. But yeah, Shirelias has not been optimal on any champion. It has not really been considered on any champion. Good of them to buff it. Good of them to keep on top of this kind of stuff. Then we go to the burst items changes. So in general, things are gaining about 5 attack damage, but losing about 1/3 of their damage. So, all right. Duskblade, 5 AD, minus 35 and 5%. Prowler's Claw, gets 10 ability haste, minus 35 damage and 5% AD ratio. Mistaken upgrade on Ornn. Rocket Belt gets 10 ability power and 100 health, losing 50 to, up to even half of the supersonic damage. And unlike the AD mythics, this starts at level 1, which means it's never actually 175. It's 200 to 250, cut to 125. Night Harvester, 10 ability power, 50 health, because this was really more like, 150, 160 to 200, flat 125. Now, these things, I believe, still have AP ratios. They're just not listed because the ratios didn't change. But, right, here's more AP, here's more health, here's more haste, heals more attack damage. Lower burst, lower burst, lower burst. Even the Trinity Force is losing 10 attack damage for 10 haste. A little bit lower burst. Now, I'm actually not a huge fan of this one. I think 25 AD is kind of too low, but whatever. Also, I would have liked, just to keep the 3, maybe keep it at, 30 attack damage, maybe 15 haste, whatever, minor point, but meh. Gore Drinker, 10% total attack damage, less damage, also less healing overall. We'll cover that in a little bit as well, but less healing because it's calculated one at a time sequentially. So the missing health, and then it looks at your new health bar, then missing health, and look at the new health bar, then missing health. Stridebreaker also down 5 AD, plus 10 haste, minus to the halting / damage. Okay, so let's cover these now that we have them going on. All right, so here's Duskblade before, here's Duskblade after. Technically, yep, you're paying half as much gold for the Night Stalker proc damage. Is this item of similar power? Yeah, probably. It already doesn't slow for ranged champions. The damage still scales off AD, as we know. Yeah, the item should still be fine. Prowler's Claw, again, similar stuff, has 3 more lethality than Duskblade, because that's kind of the intent of the item, right? The mythic passive is here's more lethality. I do find it a little odd. Again, this is Riot again trying to say, okay, look, lower burst, more spell rotations. And again, I actually am a fan of consistency, right? Look, it's 20, 60, 18, 20, 60, 21, same cost, same proc damage. Like, you know, there's something pretty convenient about this, right? I really do like how similar the items are. On the one hand, I really, really enjoy that. On the other, these items were meant to do slightly different things, right? Duskblade was the haste item, and so it gave you 20 haste. And I guess we'll do it here. It gave you 20 haste. Prowler's Claw was the lethality item, so it gave you less haste, but it gave you lethality. I would not have minded them trying to find a way to, like, still keep the haste a bit lower. And it's not that big of a deal, because the mythic passive is still going to make Duskblade give more haste, right? And this lethality bump plus this lethality bump is still going to exist, right? Through the mythic passive and the base stats. So these items still do have unique positions. And really, I do want to be clear that, like, I am a fan of items being as consistent as possible so that their differences stand out. But in the case of these items, their difference is literally ability haste, and, you know, the base stat haste change isn't there anymore. I don't actually hate it. It's not even really even an ear flick or anything. It's just like, you know, maybe they could have done this. But again, one of their goals was, let's lower burst somewhat and, you know, let them do a little bit better in longer duration fights. Let's keep DPS about the same. Let's just take it away from burst. And that necessarily means, yeah, unless you want to make this thing have 80 attack damage or something, which, hey, by the way, that's burst, you know, it's reasonable. So I totally get it, and I'm not really complaining. So let me go into the AP versions, where we've got Rocket Belt and Night Harvester. And so, yep, here we go, from 80, 15, 250 to 90, 15, 350. And lo and behold, Rocket Belt is gold efficient. I mean, it gained, obviously, you know, 500 gold worth of stats. 500 gold worth of stats. That is a lot of stats to gain. Wow, what a really, really substantial bump. Because unless I did my math incorrectly, but I don't think I did, I got 200 gold worth of AP and, you know, 300 gold worth of health. Yeah, that math was accurate. Okay, cool. Let's move forward. Before I get too nervous about being wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. So, I mean, wow, Rocket Belt sounds outstanding. I mean, you're just getting Supersonic and Mythic Passive for free. And, you know, good of them to nerf Supersonic. I really could have seen them nerf this even lower and actually just pick the same numbers as Luden's. But to be fair, these cooldowns are longer than Luden's Tempest. So, you know, there's a consideration here, to be fair. But yeah, this thing was a lot of damage, and now it's, you know, in some cases, I mean, half as much realistically. Still, the AP ratio is 15%. This AD ratio is 25%. Those numbers line up pretty well. These numbers are still, yes, a little bit higher than Luden's. I think Luden's is, what, 100 plus 10% or something like that. But, you know, close enough. Yeah, solid item. We look at Night Harvester, kind of the same. Interestingly enough, Night Harvester is less gold efficient because it has 50 less health on it. I don't know why it needs to have 50 less health on it. They could have done the same thing, but they wanted to do less of a stat bump because they nerfed this by less, right? This is still 138.5 plus 15% if you round in the item itself. And you can see the base damage on Night Harvester was lower initially. So, you know, they nerfed Night Harvester by less through the active. So why shouldn't they buff the health by less? No, they could have buffed the AP by less, I suppose, as a possibility. And this would have been 85 ability power and keep the 350 health. Honestly, that would have been a consideration. It's not really a big deal, kind of regardless. Also, I mean, I guess kind of interesting, right? That they didn't do the changes they did to these guys, right? That, you know, they kept them all at a nice flat 60 attack damage and then bumped the 10 ability haste to 20. As, you know, roughly the same size change as 5 AD. And, you know, 5 AD is roughly the same size as 10 AP. So, you know, maybe they could have just bumped ability haste by 5 and said, actually, no, all of the mage mythics just give 20 ability haste. I honestly wouldn't have hated that. I wouldn't have hated seeing 20 ability haste instead of 90 ability power, especially, again, with the goals being, hey, they want to lower burst overall. Why not go with the theme of just everyone gets 20 ability haste with their first mythic, right? If you're a spellcaster, you know, you're an assassin or a mage, you're a spellcaster. your Mythic gives you 20 ability haste. Like, I don't hate that. I actually kind of really like the consistency of that. I think that's really cool. I mean, the mana Mythics already give 20 haste, all of them, right? So why doesn't Vladimir get that? I don't know. It really could have happened, I think. It's not a big deal. Again, it's not like I think the game is badly designed because there's 10 ability power instead of 5 haste somewhere. That's not actually a real consideration. Also want to point out that 10 ability power is stronger than 5 haste, and I don't think they wanted to nerf these items, so that's also a consideration. Either way, again, pretty minor stuff. Overall, I will say I'm a fan of the changes. Like, I'm mostly nitpicking here. Then we go into Trinity Force. And actually the item lost in efficiency. So as I said, 10 attack damage is, it costs more gold than 10 ability haste. And what's interesting is, in fact, for most of these champions, they'd rather have 5 attack damage than almost 10 ability haste. So what's actually really kind of convenient and kind of cool is I looked at the stat shards that exist on runes, right? When you go in the bottom right corner, you're clicking little stat shards at the very bottom corner. The adaptive force, whether it's ability power or attack damage, the attack speed, and the ability haste are all almost exactly 200 gold worth of that stat, which means 8 haste, 10 attack speed, 9 ability power, 5.4 attack damage. Those are all almost exactly 200 gold worth of stats. By comparison, the armor and MR are like 130. And those are actually pretty balanced, so it's fine. But so that means that we're considering 5.4 attack damage as 8 haste in gold value. And for the vast majority of champions, they correctly choose the adaptive force, the attack damage, over the haste. Now, okay, at level 1, you care more about 5 AD than you care about haste. And at level 13, you probably care about more haste than you do attack damage, right? So, items are not runes. Runes come in at level 1, items come in later on by necessity, but I'm still not really sure that 10 AD is worth 10 haste. So this feels a little bit like the item got nerfed. It didn't seem like Trinity Force was overperforming. Now, maybe it actually was, and there was a reason for this. And if that's the case, then, you know what, fair game, you got me. But I don't know. You're paying, roughly 100 more gold for all of your stuff because I think this item is 100 gold less efficient. We go to Gore Drinker. It has all these fun stats. Obviously none of the base stats of the item really changed. I realized late that Stridebreaker... Oh, no. This is why. Okay. So we're going to do Gore Drinker first. So Gore Drinker, again, none of the upfront stuff changes. Only Thirsting Slash changed. It does 10% less damage, basically. So here is the math on how much you're actually healing for. So Thirsting Slash. If you are Kayn, because Thirsting Slash is total AD, if you are Kayn, here is how much healing Thirsting Slash gave you. Because it went from doing 20% total AD to 25% total AD. And so how much total AD does Kayn have at level 6 and higher with this item? This much. And so the total AD heal went from 25 to 34 to 32 to 42, which is a difference of about 6.5 to 8.5. Now, of course, the more items you buy, the bigger this number gets. So once you get Gore Drinker, and then a Sterix, and then a Death Stance, and then a GA, and then a Black Cleaver, this number keeps going up. Of course, right, by 20% of the attack damage you bought. So every 100 bonus AD you buy is 5 more here. But this is how much more Gore Drinker heals outright, full stop, against one target. It's not a ton, but it's there. Keep in mind, Gore Drinker itself actually gives you up to 50% bonus AD the lower your health bar is. So there's even more attack damage to filter and feed in to the Gore Drinker heal. But, as mentioned, the heal is calculated sequentially for each champion hit, meaning diminishing returns for the missing health. And so here is this. You will always heal for 6.5 to 8.5 more per target. If you're healing for, we'll just use level 6 for example, if you're healing for 50 or more per target, that 50 health you're getting back is no longer missing health. 12% of that missing health of 50 is 6.2. Well, 6 really, but 53. We're moving on. Which means if you are healing for this much, it's not a buff anymore. That's what this means. If you're healing for this much per target, this is not a buff anymore. And so, yeah, That's what it comes down to, which means that, you're already going to be healing for 25. So if you are missing, if you're missing 500 health, well, 12% of 500 health is 50 to 60. You're going to heal 50 to 60? And actually, sorry, not healing 500, healing for, 27, right? Because you're getting the 25. So if you are missing 250 health, 12% of that is 27, gets you over the hurdle. It's a nerf. So in most cases, multi-target healing is in fact weaker. Even to the tune of I'm only missing 200, 300, 400 health, Thirsting Slash is weaker. So what this means is overall, Thirsting Slash, right, does less damage. And in any realistic multi-target scenario where you care, Thirsting Slash is weaker. In every single target scenario, it is stronger. Not all Thirsting Slashes are, 5 targets hit, right? A lot of them are 1, 2, or 3. So it is not an objectively always weaker item. Now, it's going to probably lower the win rate of the item overall, but there are cases where the item is strictly stronger. And then we have Stridebreaker, which, hey, is getting the, the 20 ability haste. The AD is going down to 45. Again, Halting Slash is going down. Okay. Now, by comparison, Gore Drinker, 45 AD, 20 haste. Stridebreaker, 45 AD, 20 haste. Goes from, and notice, by the way, right, Trinity Force got 10 haste and lost 10 attack damage. Stridebreaker got 10 haste and lost 5 attack damage, right? Here's Triforce with our 20 ability haste. This is even more reason why I feel like Rocket Belt and Harvester should have just had 20 on it, because now they're the only ones. I'm just saying it's a little bit, that's all. Just a very little bit. Either way, here we are, right? Here we are with Stridebreaker. Right, and again, this is actually a buff to the stats overall. It's an efficient item. Yeah, you don't always, you have to want attack speed on this item, but you're buying it for a reason. You're buying it because it's the item you want. Here's some move speed, on hitting stuff. Here's Halting Slash damage and whatnot. Again, it's an efficient item. It's just, it lost 5 AD, it gained 10 haste. It makes the item stronger, makes the item better, and it continues furthering the idea that, these items are, let's make them a little bit less bursty, let's give them a little bit less attack damage, let's get the cooldowns back up. I'm a fan of that. And then we have Lucidity here a second time, for no reason. All right. Now, we do not have the patch notes, but there was a tweet from Mark Yetter saying what the micro patch was going to be for 11.1. And so, follow me around. Follow me around. Oh yeah, and lifesteal or Grievous Winds items now apply for 1 second longer. Sure, okay. Great. Graves has 2 less attack damage. It's a small nerf. Graves actually received pretty much nothing but buffs throughout all of 2020 because he just wasn't played for a really, really long time, and eventually people picked him up. The most recent buff was they buffed his MR to melee champion levels, so now he tanks kind of everyone. I don't know. Wasn't really a fan of that being the buff, but they're dropping his AD by 2, which help a little bit, and he'll be a bit weaker. Now, I do want to point out that Graves, by the way, in at least Plat plus solo queue, is 49.3% win rate. He is a full 1.5% lower win rate than the average champion in Plat plus. Now, he might be frustrating. His ban rate is 36.6%. People are banning him a lot. His pick rate's 18.7%. He's really popular. He's just not really objectively overpowered. It's a frustration ban. I don't know. I would like to see the MR change reverted, because I think that's the one where people can be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to pick an AP jungler up against Graves. It's going to work. I don't know. That feels like it would have more of a feeling impact, because Graves' win rate is not, as far as I can tell, absurd. Next up, we have Ivern Q. Ivern is very, very good. 54.7% win rate. Pretty low pick rate, pretty low ban rate. People aren't necessarily frustrated by him. Certainly he's gotten a lot more popular because he's OP. And so here's 2 seconds added to his Q cooldown. His most recent set of buffs were really, really absurd. He kind of suffered in the preseason update. And so he got, Daisy got buffed, Trigger Seed got buffed, Champion's way, way stronger. But yeah, Q cooldown goes back up by 2 seconds, back to where it was before. It's a partial revert of his buffs from a couple patches ago. I think wise to do, good to nerf Ivern back down. He will still be in a very good spot. Next up is Malphite, who is doing exceptionally well. 53.7% in top lane, 54.1% in mid. I mean, this is a champion who's a full 3% win rate above other champions. His pick rates are actually pretty high, almost 10% in top, 1.5% in mid even. 30% ban rate's pretty high as well. He's banned more than Yasuo. I mean, it's pretty big deal here. Now, I will point out that Malphite has among the sharpest matchup tables of any champion in League of Legends. He's at like 56 against Fiora and 56 against Darius, and then 46 against Sylas, and then 58 against Vayne. And it's just like bam, 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 garbage, bam, garbage, bam, garbage. Once they nerfed Malphite's base MR to be absolute trash, it's like 48, or sorry, 28. Wow, 48 would be really high. He has, I mean, he's always had, but he continues to have very, very bad AP matchups. He is really weak in magic damage champions. It's actually part of, I think, why Malphite's mid lane win rate is so good, is that they're only picking him when they see physical damage mid. Because I don't think you really blind Malphite mid. I mean, because you're so easily counterpicked, your win rate wouldn't be that high if people just like always picked Azir and stuff into you. And there are some ADC does well against, like Victor, because he just engages on him and he dies with a jungle gank, but in general, Malphite is incredibly counterpickable. So what they did is they nerfed Malphite's armor ratios on his first W and his E. And so this is the total damage of the abilities. This is without the W, or without his character passive, tripling his armor contributions. This is just like his base armor funneled into the ability. And so keep in mind that even as you're ranking up the ability, because his armor does so much of it, this is actually still a pretty meaningful damage cut. You know, you're overall going to feel this is going to be a fairly meaningful damage drop. And obviously, as you buy more items, as you rank up W and get the % armor bonuses in there, this does even more work. This is honestly a fairly meaningful damage drop to the champion. This is going to be somewhat felt. And yeah, he's probably still going to be on the strong side, don't get me wrong, but he will not be at absurd levels anymore. So that's Malphite at a very high win rate. Then we go to Taliyah also getting nerfed. And I saw some complaints online about, like, doesn't Riot understand they're making Taliyah a jungler? Yeah, that's the point. Like, the designer went and looked at the fact, I mean, Taliyah's never been popular, but went and looked at, like, when Taliyah was popular. The height of Taliyah's actual popularity as a champion was when she was a jungler. And people are going to come like, oh, it's because she was OP. It's like, Taliyah's been OP for a lot of her life. Taliyah has never been popular for any of it. Even at Taliyah's most OP, she has never been more popular than Yasuo at his weakest, right? Like, Taliyah is just not a popular champion. But people enjoyed playing Taliyah the most when she was a jungler. And so that's the position that they're actually putting Taliyah in, is that, yeah, you know, flex picks are always a problem for pro play, and it's gonna, right, as soon as the champion is pro viable, they have to sit sub 50, and Taliyah mains get a shitty champion. So, you know, I think Riot, correctly so, the designer correctly so, is saying, look, we're going to put Taliyah in a role, not make her a big flex pick, and then balance her for that role and let players enjoy their champion balanced in a role so that you can go play her. Like, that's a good thing. How do you think Karma players feel? Karma's trash. Not really, because you actually just max E and then it's fine, but like, this is what, like, do you want to be a Ryze player? Well, too bad. He's in pro play sometimes, right? Like, this is a problem that needs to be fixed somehow. Do you want to be able to play Aurelia? Sorry, she's a flex pick and, you know, really dynamic, so has to sit sub 50. Like, you have to solve these by getting rid of flex picks and trying to find ways to buff them so that their win rate can be okay without getting cannibalized by pro. I'm sorry if you're a mid laner. But yeah, Taliyah was actually popular as a jungler, relatively speaking. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for this to be where she lives. So yeah, Taliyah a little bit overtuned in the jungle, 52% win rate, and Taliyah's actually a reasonably difficult champion. Like, he actually has some pretty substantial like win rate growth on mastery. So being this early into people like relearning Taliyah jungle, being at 52% means that she's definitely overtuned. Her ban rate has not been terribly high. Her pick rate is moderate for sure. I mean, keep in mind, like, you know, her pick rate is higher than Xayah. Her pick rate is higher than Pantheon mid or top. Her pick rate's higher than Karma support. Like, she's actually getting a pretty good amount of play. Yeah, again, she's a bit OP, but like, they got Taliyah into a like, oh, this champion exists state. Good job. Well done. And yeah, she's a jungler. So the nerf is her move speed while rock surfing is down somewhat. It's instead of being 20 to 45, it's 12 to 40%, I believe. So more of an early game nerf. Keep in mind, rock surfing drops off when you get in combat, and it takes 2 seconds to come back after leaving, after not dealing damage, and it still has to ramp up over about a half a second overall. So in a lot of cases, if you're jungling really, really well, if you're jungling efficiently, it's really only hasting you like running between wolves and raptors. Otherwise, you're kind of in combat constantly anyway. What this really does, though, is it nerfs gank speed. This doesn't really nerf clear speed. It nerfs gank speed somewhat, though. You don't run down the river as fast. That part is going to be felt. That's going to be there. It's a pretty small nerf. Honestly, it feels like they're letting Talia soak a little bit longer, and this is where they're going with it, which seems fine. And next up, they have 2 final buffs to AD carry. So Sivir, and as you can kind of see at the bottom of the screen, Varus. Both these champions are getting buffed. Alongside Xayah, these are the 2 worst performing bot lane champions. So good job, Riot. You have the bottom 3 AD carries. I'm a big fan. So Sivir's mana pool is going up by pretty much a flat 41. Now, worth noting that, I would have liked just, the nice 320 plus 40. But here's something interesting, right? I did my video, a few months ago about mana and how I wanted everything to have, a nice, flat, easy mana growth. But here's an interesting thing about Sivir. Sivir only has one ability. So Sivir has an issue, which is her lane is really uninteractive if all she does is turbo push the lane, right? If she spams Q, spams W, and just pushes the lane forever, she does really frustrating things, and, the wave, you just sit on your turret forever because she has too much mana, and she shoves the wave forever. And that's really frustrating. And so Riot needs to be able to keep that balanced and keep it healthy. I mean, even more than balanced, healthy. Which means that Q needs to keep scaling up in mana cost, and in fact it does. It goes from 70 to 110 mana, which is very, very high for a basic ability. And Ricochet costs 75 mana. It's very expensive. Sivir has some of the highest mana costs in the game. And one of the other difficulties is that Sivir doesn't have an ability that ranks up in mana cost in the end game, right? Q stops at level 9, and then W doesn't even scale. So by level 9, her mana costs don't even increase anymore. So how do you get Sivir to go from, look, my early laning might have really abusive mana cost concerns, but my late game needs to be free from mana cost concerns? How do you do that but mana scaling, right? And if you say, no, it's 320 plus 40, you're just missing out on like 200 mana in the end game that you need. And unless you want to do really weird things like Boomerang Blade's mana cost goes down with character level, which feels bad, or like, I don't know, her ult rank lowers her ability mana costs by 10. Like, those feel really janky when you can just simply have her base stats be good, right? Like, that just makes sense. Now, probably, yeah, they could have lowered the actual mana cost rank up on Boomerang Blade, and they really could have had Ricochet mana cost go down by 3 per level up, so that it goes from, 75 to 72 to 69, nice, to, go down from there. That probably would have been a totally reasonable solution. And yeah, Riot could have done that, right? They could have said, well, we can buff your base mana to 320, and we can make Ricochet's mana cost go down with rank. Maybe that is what they should have done. Mana cost going down with rank is not the most absurd thing ever. And also, who cares? Like, by having a mana pool this big, it means that maybe you might go Muramana and you get more attack damage out of it. Like, there's something decent there. Sadly, Muramana does not apply the on-hit damage to Ricochet bounces, which is too bad, but, there's at least a consideration that maybe Muramana Sivir is here. And, it might be true that the higher your mana pool, the more you actually want Manamune and Muramana. But it also means that, like, if you're balancing a champion around having high costs and a high mana pool, it means that buying mana is less good. Let's move on. The other half of this buff, though, after getting her base mana up by quite a bit, this is just like a flat 40 mana increase, so it's more in the early game and then less in the late game, which really means they really could have just lowered the costs because it's an early game mana buff, whatever. They increased Q damage by, I believe, 5 flat, and 0.05 total AD. So this is the damage on one half of the Boomerang Blade. Now keep in mind, this does not mean the ability does 500 damage, because the ability does less damage as it passes through things, which means you're never really getting the full damage on both halves. Regardless, the total damage is up by 10 to 4%, and the total AD ratio, the scaling, is up by 7 to 4%. This is pretty solid, this is pretty good stuff. This is a pretty big buff to Sivir, who's doing pretty poorly, but not horribly. Her pick and ban rates are incredibly low, but actual win rate wise, 48.8% is not abysmal. It's not outstanding, but like it's not that bad. And then we have Varus getting 5 mana off the Q and getting early Q cooldown lower, which flattens out by level 9. Yeah, you know, pretty solid 6% mana to cost decrease and a solid, 10% off the cooldown early game. Actually, I think this is Q. I think this is Q. Yeah, it's Q cost and cooldown. And Varus is definitely in a really bad spot. Varus got hit really hard by lethality items getting weaker on 80 carries. That said, he's now back to Eclipse being his best option for lethality builds, because Eclipse was the least nerfed of the lethality items. And in fact, as we're going to see with, Duskblade getting even weaker next patch, all the more reason to just stick with Eclipse. But also Gale Force. Gale Force is the best item in the game for pretty much all crit skilling champions. So Yasuo, Yone, and all the marksmen, just buy Gale Force. It's overtuned. Now, yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, what it really comes down to is, like, people are going hard on, going for Duskblade Varus, and yeah, it's just not that good anymore. So yeah, you gotta kind of hop off. You gotta go for some of the crit builds. Gale Force is the best of all the crit items, and that will help quite a bit for all the Varuses out there. He is still a little bit weak. Even if you just like fix your itemization in 1025B, he would still be a little bit weak. But with these buffs and buying the right items, yeah, I know there's a lot of qualifying statements, Varus is in a reasonable spot. I'll also point out that I was wrong about forcibly Emaxing. Wmax and Emax are actually very, very close. You can kind of pick whichever one. The winners are very, very close together. I'm kind of assuming if you're going to do Wmax, you're probably doing more of an attack speed build with things like Gale Force. And if you're doing Emax, you're probably doing full lethality. And ultimately, yeah, considering that you should probably just go Gale Force every game, probably just do Wmax. But again, it's really, really close, and you can kind of go either way. Alrighty, I do not have time for a TLDR because in the real world, I have stuff to do. I don't actually have the time for a TLDR, so I'm sorry if you were looking forward to that, but I just don't have the room for it. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. This ran a little bit long because we had actually kind of a lot of notes to cover, but I appreciate y'all for hanging out, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.